Hello everybody, welcome to Calls. This is the 2023 Honda Classic Initial Research Show. First off, I want to thank everybody who came out Friday evening for the Friday night chill stream. It was a lot of fun, a lot of interaction, preparing our weekend and round 3 and 4 showdown lineups. Plus we talked a little bit about the Honda Classic. And just about golf in general. It was a really fun stream. So thanks to everybody who joined me Friday evening. I really hope to get those pretty popular. We'll be doing a lot of golf, continuing on with the golf weekend and showdown content there. When baseball starts up, we'll make sure to do some baseball content on the Friday night chill stream. I'll also be doing some gaming as well. So again, it was just a lot of fun. And thanks to everybody who came out Friday evening, hung out with me for a little bit. And if you have not joined me on a Friday evening for the Friday night chill stream, I certainly hope you consider doing so Friday evenings at 9 p.m. Eastern, unless otherwise noted during the week, but usually at 9 p.m. Eastern on Fridays. A lot of fun, really laid back. We listen to music, dig into some data about all of the things that you as the community want to get into, whether that's golf, baseball, or anything else. It's just a fun time, relaxing. So I can't thank you enough for joining last Friday. And then have a couple of shout outs to give. I know P was looking pretty darn solid at the beginning of the day. Longtime viewer and subscriber to the channel. I don't know how he ended up with his best DFS lineup, but I know he was having a very successful weekend this weekend at the Genesis. So congratulations on your what I'm assuming is a winning week, P. And I'm hopefully you'll jump in chat and let me know how it ended up. And then I'm actually a pretty big winner this week, and not in the way I thought it was going to be, especially Friday evening, considering how great my DFS was looking. Of course, I mentioned Lee Hodges and Thomas Detry, who kind of fell off over the weekend, but certainly by Friday evening, Thomas Detry was looking good. Of course, Max Homa, John Rahm, all of these players. I was feeling pretty good about my DFS. I also had some pretty terrible suggestions for you as well. Callum Tarrant comes first to mind, and all that stuff, but was looking pretty good. And then my DFS kind of fell apart over the weekend, but I ended up hitting 2 parlays for the Genesis. Both of them were at 10-1. So I had a Max Homa and Patrick Cantlay top 10 parlay that hit, and then a Will Zalatoris, Victor Hovland, and Tony Finau top 20 parlay that hit. Both of those were at 10-1. So a very successful week for me, albeit not in my usual sense in terms of DFS, and certainly not the way I was expecting it to be a successful week. But I will take a successful week nonetheless. That is 4 straight weeks with a positive return on investment, either in DFS or outright wagering, maybe even both. But 4 straight weeks of a positive return on investment. We'll never complain about that. And we move to Florida and the Florida swing for the Honda Classic. So we are no longer out west. So especially Wednesday evenings, we will now have anywhere 2 to 3 hours less time to submit our lineups late on Wednesday evenings. So we're looking forward to that, starting the Florida swing. So let's get into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from fantasynational.com. It is simply the best tool out there for your money. It allows me to do what I do, to give you the stats that I think are going to be relevant for the week. It's going to make you a much smarter gambler, a much better DFS player. Look, there are plenty of great tools out there. There's no doubt about it. I simply believe Fantasy National is the best tool out there for your money. Go check them out. It's well worth your investment. In the description to the video, there are links to all of my social media. This is Twitter and Instagram, where I post research throughout the week for the upcoming golf tournament. I'll also be doing some baseball research now that pitchers and catchers have reported for spring training. So be looking for a little bit of baseball content from me, probably more so in March, but going to try and get myself going or get in gear with baseball and the golf as always. So if you want to see the research or a summary of the research that I do for both of those topics, give me a follow at the links down below. Twitter is also where I post my betting cards. This is where you would have seen I had quite a pretty extensive betting card for the Genesis. I felt pretty good about quite a few things. Was close on a Thomas Detry top 20. He ends up T33 or so didn't hit that, but was certainly high on him. Of course, the two aforementioned parlays that hit. So if you want to see my betting cards for each golf tournament, those are posted to Twitter Wednesday evening, mostly. Sometimes Thursday mornings if it's a really, really late evening. But those are always posted to Twitter, so give me a follow there if you want to see that. And then finally, the Twitch, or the link to my Twitch channel, is also in the description. This is where I do my in-depth research, where I grab the specific information that leads me to write the summaries that I do for Twitter and Instagram, and then a lot of my in-depth baseball content, gaming content as well as over there. So if you want to see all of that, give me a follow over at Twitch as well. And then finally, we're live, chat's open. I want to hear how successful your week was. If it was, if it wasn't, what or who crashed your weekend? What are you looking forward to for the Honda Classic? How much do you know of PGA National and the Honda Classic? Just wanting to hear from you all, from the community. And of course, if you were a winner this past week at the Genesis, let me know either in chat or in the comments so I can give you a shout out every week at the beginning of a new golf week. But let's do our initial research for the 2023 Honda Classic. And we're going to start over at GCSAA and the tournament fact sheet for the Honda Classic. Actually, the Arnold Palmer Invitational tournament fact sheet is out as well. So that is definitely something we could look at this coming Friday evening in the Friday Night Chill Stream to get ready for the next designated event on the PGA Tour, which is next week's Arnold Palmer Invitational. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's cover the Honda Classic, as that is the tournament for this week, as it is not a designated event and it is a pretty shallow field. But for the players who are playing this week, they are in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. The PGA National is a par 70 that sets up at 7,125 yards. So it's long for a par 70, but it is still a short course. So we are going to be looking at some short course metrics for sure this week. The stimp meter is listed at 12. These have been some of the fastest greens year in and year out. Maybe not the fastest, but they certainly oscillate between fast and lightning. Another important note is that the original architects of PGA National were Tom and George Fazio in 1981, but most recently has been redone by Jack Nicklaus in 2018. He also renovated the course in 2002 and 2014. So we are going to be looking at some Jack Nicklaus metrics this week for the Honda Classic, as PGA National is a redesign of Jack Nicklaus's. PGA National, 7,000 square feet on average for the greens. Again, larger than the average tour green. Average tour green is anywhere between 5,500 and 6,000 square feet. Just for comparison, the Genesis Riviera, their greens were listed at 7,500 square feet. So pretty close to the same size of greens, maybe a little bit smaller. Not a lot of fairway this week, only 24 acres of fairway, and honestly not a lot of rough either, only 65 acres of rough. The difference with this course, with Riviera having no water on the property, PGA National is almost the exact opposite. 15 holes with water in play here at PGA National. So having a lot of precision off the tee is going to be paramount. For green grasses, or for grasses across the course, we're on Tiff Eagle Bermuda, so Bermuda greens on the greens. Fairways and rough are Celebration Bermuda and Bermuda overseeded with perennial rye. So Bermuda throughout the entirety of the course, pretty much. Especially what we'll be focusing on are these fast and lightning Bermuda greens. But there is a look at the GCSA tournament fact sheet for the Honda Classic this year. Again, a short course, at least in totality. It is a longer par 70 setup, but 7,125 yard par 70, 12 on the stimp, which would be fast. I am telling you now that these greens do get into lightning territory. We're also going to be looking at some Jack Nicklaus Architect filters, as this is a Jack Nicklaus redesign. Little bit larger than average tour greens, lots and lots of water in play. So there's a look at PGA National from the GCSA tournament fact sheet. Let's move on over to Fantasy National. And I went ahead and put the filter or the date filters to the start of 2022, as I'm going to be looking at short and, as we'll see, difficult scoring for filters. But just to give us an idea of who is in the Honda this year, or this week at least, and who has played well since the start of 2022, we have Sung Jae, Shane Lowry, Aaron Wise, Denny McCarthy coming off a very, very solid Genesis, Thomas Detry, Billy Horschel, Matt Kuchar, another suggestion of mine that really, really panned out this week. Matt Kuchar played extremely well. I believe he finished solo 8th at the Genesis. It was very, very scarcely owned. Let's see, others, Christian Bezadenhout, Cam Davis, S.H. Kim. So again, it runs out of high ranking OWGR players very, very quickly after Sung Jae, Shane Lowry, maybe Aaron Wise, and Cam Davis. But really there's a big two here. It's Sung Jae and Shane Lowry, and then it falls off pretty darn quickly. But before we go much further into looking at the field this week, let's take a look at PGA National in terms of a Fantasy National scorecard and graphical kind of view. And of course, anytime I am trying to get an idea about a course, I will look at the 9th and 10th most difficult holes and see where par falls. The 9th most difficult hole is 15 hundredths over par. The 10th most difficult hole, still a 10th over par. 11th is still over par. So you have to get to the 14th most difficult hole, or otherwise the 5th easiest hole, before you hit par. That will tell you just how difficult PGA National is. And it's not like you have a ton of scoring opportunities either. The par 5 on the front 9, it does play to 4/10 under par. It yields an eagle about 2.5% of the time, so it's a decent scoring opportunity for sure. And then the par 5 18th plays to 1/4 of a shot under par. But then you get to 500ths immediately after those two easy holes. There's just not a lot of scoring to be had here at PGA National. Pars are excellent scores around this course. Whereas on the opposite end of the spectrum, the most difficult hole plays to almost 4/10 of a shot over par. You have 1/4 of a shot over par, 2/10, almost 2/10. Again, two holes back to back that play 1/4 of a shot over par. It's just very, very difficult around here. And you can see the level of the amount of bogeys. I shouldn't say level, the amount of bogeys that are prevalent throughout the course and just not a lot of birdie opportunities. So very, very, very difficult. We're absolutely going to be using that metric throughout the week. As we move on down to some graphical views of PGA National, you see for the average strokes gained per round by shot type, it is a ball striking course for the top 10s. You've got approach just a shade over 1.0 per round. The off the tee is substantially higher than around the green. I know it doesn't look like it, but you have 0.45 basically here to a 0.32. So it is a ball striking course for the top 10s. Here at PGA National, we look at the top 5s, and it's separating itself. Boy, that word almost escaped me. Ball striking is certainly separating itself. As you move up the leaderboard here, look at the approach, 1.2. The putting still hasn't reached 1.0 yet. Off the tee has crossed the 0.5 threshold. And then for the winners, just look at the insane amount of strokes gained approach from your winners here at PGA National. Now, the around the green does make a slight charge for the winners, but it's surprising to see that putting never crosses the 1.0 strokes gained per round threshold anywhere among the top 10 for players at PGA National. It is all strokes gained approach. So we'll see, especially tomorrow in the Data Dive show, where my mixed condition model was last year, how much we're going to use from it, or move some percentages and filters and all that around. But clearly, strokes gained approach is the most important shot type here at PGA National. And off the tee is also something, especially since there's so much water in play, you just have to find the fairway. And we'll see that forces players to not hit driver here. But there's a look at the strokes gained by shot type. We move to strokes gained by hole by par, and as you can see, the par 5s are the lowest. There's only 2 of them here, and while they are your decent scoring opportunities, the par 5 third, the easiest hole, par 5 18th, second easiest hole, it really does not contribute to who is rising on these leaderboards. You have to play these very difficult par 3s well if you want to have success at PGA National. So par 3s are the highest strokes gained by hole by par for your top 10s. Moving to the top 5s, it increases its importance and its distance from the others. 0.2 to 0.15, par 3s to par 4s. And then for your winners, par 5s do actually end up being the most for the winners, just because you have to birdie those. But you can still see the extreme importance of par 3s. So that is going to be a heavy emphasis this week that we look at, and it'll be certainly reinforced in Microsoft Excel that par 3s are just a big part of the Honda Classic and PGA National. So par 3s, par 3s, par 3s. We move to hole composition. There are 2 par 3s that measure 175 to 200, one that's 200 to 225, and one 225 plus on the scorecards. So we'll see throughout the week, especially tomorrow on the Data Dive, that some of these holes will get moved around and whatnot, but we'll see if there's a most important range, as I'm not really sure yet if there is. I've only done just a bare minimum of research coming into tonight. So we'll see, or we'll take a good look and see if there's a specific length of par 3s that matter the most, or if it's just simply par 3s in total. For your par 4s, you do have 3 short par 4s, but they're not drivable. They are just forced layup holes where you're hitting irons off the tee and still left with a mid iron in, as we'll look at the approach shot distribution here in a minute. So no drivable par fours, but 3 that are short, 350 to 4. You have 4 each, 400 to 500 split evenly, 4 to 450, 450 to 5. You do have 1 extremely long par 4 that measures 500 plus. I believe it's 508. I'm going to have to cheat. Yep, the par 4 10th measures to 508. So there's your par 4 hole composition. Again, nothing graphically would say that one particular length is the most important, but again, we'll take a look at that in Microsoft Excel. And then the 2 par 5s, 1 each, 5 to 550 and 550 to 6. As I was mentioning, the approach shot distribution, the majority of approach shots come from 175 to 200. More than a quarter of your approach shots come from this length. So we'll see if proximity 175 to 200 is in fact the most important proximity. If there is an important proximity, you see that 150 to 175 is also pretty common. So we'll really dig into that tomorrow on the Data Dive show, but we'll take a look casually tonight in Microsoft Excel. You'll see, just to emphasize the difficulty of the Honda Classic, last year the cut was at +3. That's difficult in of its own. And that is some of the lower scores that you've had. You've been as high as +7, +6 5 years ago. So anywhere between 3 and, well, I guess I could say 2 and 4, but mainly 3 is a pretty good idea of where the cut line is going to be. It's just an extremely difficult tournament. And we'll see that again emphasized in the scoring distribution chart. Birdies, about 15.6, 0.7% or so. You've got 17.25% bogeys, and there's a pretty hefty sized bar here in the doubles. You can actually see that bar pretty easily, and there is just no eagles. You might get 1 or 2, but you put the doubles and the bogeys together on top of the birdies and the eagles, it's just difficult. Winning scores here are, if they get into double digits, it's certainly 10, 11, maybe -12. You do not get upwards of 17, 18, 19 under winners. Just not happening. There's been several years where the winning score has been -6, -7, -8, around in there. Pars are just very, very good scores here. For as much as this is a forced layup course, or it can be, and I'm going to skip ahead, you see the driving distance, 273 off the tee, whereas the average tour event is 283, 10 yards more. So for as much as players know that finding the fairway is a premium and using less club here, it's still difficult to hit the fairways here. Just a shade over 60% at PGA National versus 62% at the average tour event. So just very, very difficult off the tee, very difficult with your approaches. Just under 60% greens in regulation here at PGA National, whereas it's about 66% at the average tour event. So again, off the tee, difficult. Your irons, your approach, difficult. Scrambling, difficult. Players that are scrambling are not as successful here as they are at the average tour event. So all three of these, all three of your main strokes gained metrics are more difficult than the average tour event. Driving, approach, and around the green. So again, just difficult. Now, 3 putts aren't as common as the average tour event. They are still somewhat prevalent, almost 50%. So, maybe putting isn't the biggest deal in the world. We'll have to see in Microsoft Excel and, in the Data Dive tomorrow and all that stuff. But 3 putts per round, not as common. So it's more so the difficulty, especially with the irons, as you see the drastic difference in green and regulation percentage. Sorry, now you see the drastic difference in green and regulation percentage here versus the average tour event. Scrambling, also very difficult. Distance, not coming close as well to the average tour event. So you might think that distance is an important factor. It might be. It might be, and I'll show you why. Green regulation, proximity to the hole, 28 feet or just a little bit better than 28 feet here at PGA National versus 29 feet, the average tour event. So even though these greens are more difficult and they're larger, if you are hitting the green in proximity, you are generally closer, which is just, again, emphasizing the importance of approach and why this number just skyrockets as you rise the leaderboard. And then I don't believe you'll be able to see a lot of this, but you can see 0 to 5, not very common in terms of distance of birdie putts. And my goofy self is in the way. You won't be able to see this last bar, but 25 foot plus is about 2.5% more common on a distance of birdie putt than the average tour event. So 8% here at PGA National, 5.5% at the average tour event. So we'll see if length of putting is a big difference, since it doesn't look like 3 putts per round are. So we'll see if there's a specific length of putting. But again, just a complete emphasis on difficult. And because of that, I'm going to go to the players in the field this week, and I'm just going to go ahead and add the difficult filter for the players in the field this week. So your top 10 strokes gained total players, your best performers when a round has been difficult since the start of 2022. Those players have been Shane Lowry, Sung Jae, Aaron Wise, Chris Kirk, Billy Horschel, Eric Barnes, Tyson Alexander, Brent Grant, Adam Schenk, Denny McCarthy, and Adam Long. I have seen where there are a couple of field changes. I know Sam Ryder has withdrawn, and I know there's another one, and it's escaping me, so I don't want to tell you incorrectly, but I know Sam Ryder has withdrawn this week, so I will do my best to remember to skip him if he rises or if he shows himself in any top 10s this evening. But there's a look at your top performers when a round's been difficult. We're also going to be looking at some short course metrics. So your top performers on short courses in that same time period since the start of 2022. Your top performers have been JT Poston, Ben Griffin, Thomas Detry, Denny McCarthy, Sung Jae, Lonto Griffin, Will Gordon, Matt Kuchar, Eric Van Rooyen, Chris Kirk, and Adam Svensson. So a little bit of overlap already here. Denny McCarthy, when it was difficult, now it's short. Sung Jae, difficult and short as well. But otherwise, I mention it a lot. JT Poston prefers short courses, generally where he does his best work. Adam Svensson, the win at the RSM, a short course. Patrick Rogers generally does better on short courses. So Matt Kuchar always will prefer a shorter course, although he did play well at the Genesis, but generally does his best work on short courses as well. So there's a look at some players that you might want to pay some extra attention to start your week. Last thing I'm going to do, and I might have to expand the timeline here, let's take a look at some Jack Nicklaus performance. And you can see the majority of these players don't have enough rounds. It's only 10. So I am going to go back to January 2021, or the start of 2021. Hopefully that's going to be enough rounds. 20 from the max. You do have quite a few players who only have single digits, but I think for tonight, just to get an idea of who plays Jack Nicklaus course as well, I think going back to 2021 will be fine. So in the past 2+ years, going back to 2021, your top performers on Jack Nicklaus designed courses have been Aaron Wise, Billy Horschel, Webb Simpson, Denny McCarthy, Sung Jae, Shane Lowry, Alex Noren, Dylan Wu, Aaron Baddeley, and Justin Suh. Take Baddeley and Suh with quite a bit of grain of salt, 2 and 1 round respectively. Webb Simpson only has 4 rounds. That's what we got. But some of your Jack Nicklaus designed courses that are on the PGA Tour, you got Muirfield, which is the Nationwide Memorial presented by Nationwide. Almost escaped me, but Muirfield, Jack's Place, obviously. PGA National here, the Nicklaus Tournament course, which is part of the rotation for the American Express. You have the Concession Golf Club. That has been played a couple of times in the past. Valhalla was one of the PGA years, 2017. Don't quote me on the year, but I know the PGA was at Valhalla one year. It was a big deal because that is very local to where I am. But Valhalla and Glen Abbey is where they used to play the Canadian Open. So that was a Jack Nicklaus designed course as well. But there's your top performers on Jack Nicklaus designed courses. And I don't know how much we're going to do for the mixed condition model Wednesday with Jack Nicklaus courses, but it's always good to note who plays his designs well, as architects generally have their kind of stamp on a course. Pete Dye, very famous Don Ross, has his own stamp on courses. Jack Nicklaus the same. Let's bring this back in here. I'm going to go to the beginning of 2022 again. I'm going to remove Jack Nicklaus design. I'm going to go ahead and add Bermuda, but I'm going to show you the historic conditions for when we want to look at some putting metrics. So as we talked about seemingly already ad nauseum tonight, it's just difficult. You had one round that was average last year, and then just rounds of difficult. You did have 2017 that played 2 rounds of average and 2 rounds of difficult, but you see no easy rounds. It has been all difficult for the past 18, 19, 25 years, with the exception of one round that was average last year. The greens have been Bermuda. They are generally fast and or lightning. Last year they were lightning every single round. They can oscillate during the tournament, but generally they are fast. Now they've been sped up over the years as well, so we're definitely going to be looking at fast and lightning Bermuda greens. If they go back to average, then that is where I will be wrong this week, as they have been fast for the past 5 years. Fast and lightning for the past 5 years. But you see green speeds, always difficult. Bermuda greens have generally been pretty firm as well. Hitting fairways, typically about average. And it's generally been a short course. Wind can be a factor. I have not looked at wind. We will do that tomorrow if I remember to do so. So if you are wanting to look at some wind metrics, remind me tomorrow in chat, and I will make sure to bring up Wind Finder. We won't do anything with wind tonight, but wind can be a thing here as well. But now that we know that we're looking at fast and lightning Bermuda greens, we have the Bermuda filter. Let's add fast and lightning. I'm hoping this will be enough rounds 2022. If not, we'll have to go back to 2021. Looks like it'll be enough. Oh yeah, you got 43 rounds from McCarthy. Most, I'd say about a third to a half have 20, and most players have double digits. So yeah, that'll be fun. That'll be fine. Your top putters the past year plus, or since the start of 2022, on fast and lightning Bermuda greens. Those players have been Martin Trainer, Brian Gay, Harry Hall, Sepp Straka, Denny McCarthy, Alex Noren, Adam Long, Doc Redman, Ben Taylor, and S.H. Kim. Again, skipping Sam Ryder, I know he has withdrawn. There's been another field change. It's just escaping me at the moment. So there's your top performers on fast and lightning Bermuda greens. Going to remove these filters. Let's look at a couple of different things here before we go to the tournament history. I'm kind of debating with myself if I want to look at strokes gained approach when it's difficult. Nah. We'll save that. Let's just kind of get an idea of who's been doing good work with the irons in general. So since the start of the PGA Tour season, going back to the Fortinet in the fall, and that's it. So middle of September forward, your top strokes gained approach players have been Nick Hardy, Russell Knox, Danny Lee, Ben Martin, Ben Griffin, Robbie Shelton, Kyle Westmoreland, Sepp Straka, Ben Taylor, and Sung Kang. Again, skipping Sam Ryder. He is out this week. Oh, there we go. I'm not sure I want to look at too much more in terms of specific data. We'll save that for the data dive tomorrow. Instead, let's move to the tournament history tab, or the strokes gained total tab, if you will. Your defending champion is Sepp Straka, who has played pretty well here. Missed the cut in 2019, but two solid performances, a T27, a T33, and then the win last year. Shane Lowry was your runner-up last year. Let's see, in 2021, who was the winner in 2021? It's escaping me. I have it in Microsoft Excel, so that'll work for me. 2020 was Sung Jae. 2019 was Keith Mitchell. 2018, don't have it. That player's not in the field this week, so we'll have to go to Microsoft Excel and look at that. But so there's your past winners, at least in the past 5 years, who are playing. Sung Jae, Sepp Straka, and I don't believe Keith Mitchell is in the field this week. We'll take a look. But I know he won in 2019, so only two former winners in the past 5 years, that is, playing. Your top strokes gained total performer the past 5 years has been Ben On. You missed the cut in 2021, did not play last year. He has two top fives and a T36. Shane Lowry, 4 for 4 the past 5 years. Sung Jae has a win, a top 10, a clunker, and then a miscut. You've got Alex Noren, 3 for 4. He's got two top fives, middling, I guess, and then a miscut. Harris English hasn't played for the past 2 years, but is 3 for 3. Pretty high on the strokes gained total leaderboard there. Mark Hubbard, Chris Kirk, 3 for 5. Cam Davis. This doesn't strike me as a Cam Davis course, but he's 3 for 3. Ryan Palmer, 3 for 4. Johnny Vegas, 5 for 5. Nothing too awe-inspiring. He does have a top 20, but he is 5 for 5 at making the cut. Patrick Rogers, 4 for 5, although we saw how well that worked for him at the Genesis. It didn't. Billy Horschel, again, anytime you are on Bermuda, you got to think about Billy Horschel, although generally he puts average speed Bermuda greens better. But it's still Bermuda. You still got to think about Billy. Matthias Schwab, only 1 year, but T7. Svensson, T9 last year. Lee Hodges, T9 last year. Dylan Fratelli, 3 for 5. Couple of top 20s. All right. So there's a look at some of the players that have played pretty well here at PGA National the past 5 years. The other end of the spectrum, players who haven't. Robert Schreb actually has a top 15, but has missed the cut 3 times and a clunker of a made cut last year. So he's 2 for 5. Sung Kang, 1 for 4. Hank Lee Biota, 1 for 4. Let's see, Gligic, 0 for 3. Padraig Harrington, he is a former winner, I think, in 2015, 2014. 0 for 4. Kevin Tway, 0 for 4. Kyle Stanley, 0 for 3. Surprisingly, Austin Cook is 3 for 4 at making the cut, but all 3 are clunker made cuts, so very low on the strokes gained total there. Andrew Landry, 0 for 3. Chesson Hadley, 1 for 4. Malnati, 2 for 4. So there's a look at the players who have not played PGA National well in the past 5 years. And that is going to be a good segue to Microsoft Excel. So let's go ahead and head on over there and take a look at some specifics around PGA National. We're going to look at the comparison course chart first. Again, this is looking at, in this case, PGA National and the Honda Classic versus every other full field course, regular full field course on the PGA Tour. That's why you don't have things for, the Open, which I need to actually remove these since it changes every year. But you don't have the majors. You don't have the BMW in here. It's not a full field. You don't have the Tournament of Champions. It's not a full field. Now I know the Genesis is a considered a limited field, but it's still 130 players. I go ahead and include that. But anyway, the Honda Classic and PGA National compared to other full field courses, you see off the tee, minus 8.5% more important, or it's 8.5% less important, I guess is the best way to say that. It's just not a big deal here. Approach, 14% more important. So obviously we're going to be looking at a whole lot at strokes gained approach. We also saw that in Fantasy National's graphical view. Putting, about 1% more important. So 3-putt avoidance isn't the thing. So we'll see if maybe there's a specific length of putting. Around the green, 3% less important. So pretty close to standard except for approach. That's going to be a heavy emphasis this week. As I was mentioning, even though players club down here, you can see distance is actually a little bit more than 4% more important. Now, nothing to the extent of, well, we've had the past couple of weeks at the Genesis where it was almost 50%, Phoenix where it was almost 60%. But it is saying that it is 4% more important than the average full field course. So we'll take a look and see in the prior leaderboards tomorrow night in the Data Dive show if we see where that correlation's coming. I don't know. It doesn't seem like distance should be an important factor, but we'll see. It's odd to see fairways being 19% less important. It's odd to see greens being 10% less important. So definitely we'll have to do a lot of research on that, and we'll be doing that tomorrow on Twitch in the morning, which I will remind you of at the end of the show tonight. But it's very odd to see 19% less important and 10% less important on two what I would think are very, very important factors here at PGA National. So we'll definitely have to be looking at some prior leaderboards tomorrow and figuring that out. As you would expect with a difficult course, even though bogeys are listed at 3% less important, you can see just the emphasis on birdies and the lack thereof. I mean, bogeys are just so much more important than birdies gained. Pars are good scores here. This might be a situation where we actually do look at double bogey avoidance if this actually does turn out to be a pretty solid thing. So would make some sense with all the water on the course if players can avoid double bogeys. Generally not something I look at, but it would make some sense here. So we'll see. We're definitely going to be looking at some bogey avoidance because pars are good scores, but double bogeys might be something to look at too. All right, let's take a look at 3s, 4s, and 5s. And again, we saw this throughout the graphs on Fantasy National. 30% more important are the par 3s here at PGA National than the average full field course. It's saying that the 175 to 200 would be the most important. That makes a lot of sense because 2 of the 4 measure to here on the scorecard. but 30% more important. That is an astronomical number. It's just, again, emphasizing the importance of par 3s this week. So we're going to be looking at a whole lot of par 3 data and putting a lot of percent in par 3s come Wednesday. Par 4s, not to be ignored, they are still slightly more important than the average full field course. But it does look like, surprisingly, that the 350 to 400 par 4s, at least compared to the other full field courses, is the most important. So, just as a reminder, there are 3 that measure to here on the scorecard, 4, 4, and 1. So, at least percentage-wise, it's saying 350 to 400. We might need to go look at the actual raw data to confirm that. But par 4s aren't to be ignored, that's for sure. And we saw it in the graphs as well. The par 5s are just not important here. They aren't. Yes, you kind of need to score on them. They're your best scoring chances. But there's only 2 of them. It is what it is. Like, the par 3s are just extremely important. And there's only 1 par 5 each in these lengths. All right, quickly going to proximity. Total prox doesn't appear to be a thing. Remember, the most prevalent or most common approach shot was 175 to 200. So it is promising to see that is saying it is more important than the average full field course. 125 to 150 is actually the highest. Okay, but at least there is consistency here with the most common approach shot and it being more important than the average full field course. It's always good to see. And then lastly, I am curious to see what putting looks like. 10 to 15 feet, okay. And I also mentioned that 25 feet plus. That bar, at least specifically for birdie putts, was significantly higher than the average tour event. So we'll see if either of these ranges are the biggest factors for putting. But at least graphically, it is matching the specific raw data, or at least in terms of percentage. I do want to look at some raw data here very quickly. You see 2.82 is just a massive number. Kind of want to look at bogeys and birdies. Yeah, bogeys 2.6. I mean, it's outweighing the birdies quite heavily. Par 3s is a 1.9 in total. You have a 1.07 in the 175 to 200. So it is making up more than half. As a general rule of thumb, if that's the case, I would just focus on the 175 to 200s. But you don't want to ignore, because there's one that measures the scorecard to here and here. So that's very interesting to see. Very interesting to see. You do have 2 pretty high numbers, but you also have 2 very low numbers there. Okay, par 4s. So remember that the 350 to 400 was the highest in terms of actual percentage, but the raw number, the most important, is 400 to 450. Okay. That's actually a pretty big number there, so par 4s might be a little less important. Prox. Oh yeah, look at that. That's a really low outlier here for 175 to 200. And you got a really high outlier here. I wonder, what's that change for these percentages? Scroll over very quickly to proximities again. You've got 6.5 and now 50%. So there you go. That seems pretty good, especially because you have these outliers. A very high outlier here and a very low one there. Perhaps 175 to 200 is going to be a big factor and one that we'll focus on this week. And then finally, putting, 0.22. 0.61 is very large for there. Okay. And that's a pretty low outlier at that. All right. Interesting. All right. let's conclude the show by going over to what I call the early look file. This is the tournament history tab, or the strokes gained total tab in Fantasy National for every player in the field this week, what they've done the past 5 years here at PGA National. So you see Matthias Schwab. He's played one time in the past 5 years. It was last year, but he's played one time, finished 7th. He gained 2.8 on approach, 4 around the green, etc. Harris English. He's played 3 times in the past 5 years. He's had an average finish of 21st. He's averaged a half, or 0.4 off the tee in those 3 years, 0.7 in approach those 3 years, etc., etc. So what I like to do, I'm going to remove the players who have only played it once. I want to see players who have consistently played well at PGA National, what they've done well over the years, and see if we can't see any common trends in terms of statistics and all that stuff that we need to focus on. Let's see, the top strokes gained total player was Ben On. He's here. He's been, surprisingly, there's a little bit of green here in this off the tee. So for players that have averaged finishing top 40, this off the tee number is actually somewhat fairly large, 1.2. All right. You only have one negative number in there. You have the approach is a 1.6, so certainly some significantly higher numbers. But you also have Bill Hollis, who's just not hit irons well here at all. Around the green, 1.4, and putting, a 1.0. All right, Svensson's kind of killing that. Been on, never a good putter, so take that what you will. But he's been doing it with his irons and a little bit off the tee. It's surprising to see off the tee be so, and it's just consistently positive. It's interesting. Fairways, greens. See, again, the same players that have averaged the top 40. This is a 2.0. That's not very high at all, so it's matching what we've been seeing earlier in Microsoft Excel. Greens, 2.1, again, very, very small. So I'll be interested to see what the prior leaderboards look like tomorrow night in the Data Dive show, and see what your top end performers are doing in terms of greens and fairways. Because I would think greens is very, very important. I would think fairways is very important, but at least for players that have been playing very well, doesn't seem to be. Bogeys and birdies. Most of these players are quite heavily skewed in terms of the bogeys. See Webb, Harris English. Sam Ryder's not in the field, but he's been better at birdies. This is about even, a little bit into the birdies. Shane Lowry, been on. Cam Davis, they're all bogey avoiders here. And in general, Sepp Straka, your defending champion, much more into the bogeys. Sungjae's even. Vegas, Bill Hawes, bogey avoidance. So definitely going to be looking at bogey avoidance. Par threes. Interesting. Like 200 to 225 is no correlation really at all with these top performers. Really, the par threes aren't all that high. That's very interesting to see, considering how important they have been all night. Okay. Par fours. There's a lot of green in here. So, I mean, we're not going to ignore the par fours, that's for sure. But I still think the most important holes are the par threes here. But you look at these 350 to fours, like there's a whole lot of heavy concentration in green for this 350 to 4. So maybe we're onto something there. Could be onto something there. Let's take a look at par fives. We've seen that they're just not important. They're just not. If there is, it's the one that's 500 to 550. But I don't think we're going to be doing much with par fives this week. Instead, I do want to look at this at proximities. Total procs didn't look to be much, but you do have a pretty good concentration of green up here for the players that have been playing the Honda Classic pretty well. Now, Harris English hasn't been good here. Mark Hubbard's essentially been field average, but there's a pretty good heavy concentration of green in the rest of this top 40 in the 175 to 200. So looks to be onto something there. We're looking like we're onto something there. So anyway, that is going to do it for the initial research show tonight for the Honda Classic. Thanks to everybody who tuned in, watched, listened. Thanks for supporting the channel, whether that's liking the video, subscribing, leaving comments. I always appreciate it. We are on a pretty decent little winning streak here, 4 weeks in a row with positive return on investment. Again, not in the way I thought I would have this past week at the Genesis, but hitting 2 10-to-1 parlays certainly helps. And, you know, DFS wasn't a complete wash. I certainly had my fair share of Rahm and Homa. I had quite a bit of Kuchar to offset some of the pretty bad suggestions that I had for you as well, like Callum Tarrant. There was another one that was pretty bad. I can't remember offhand, but I'm sure it'll come to me. But hopefully you had a lot of success this past week at the Genesis. If you did, reach out to me on social media or put it in the comments of the video. I want to be able to shout out members of the community who have success. A reminder that tomorrow morning, 10:30 a.m. Eastern, I will be live on Twitch doing heavy research for the Honda Classic. We'll be looking at winners, and that reminds me, let's take a look here. Matt Jones was your winner in 2021. Sungjae 2020, Keith Mitchell 2019, Justin Thomas in 2018, and so on. But we'll be looking at former winners, their form here at specifically at PGA National. We'll take a look at their form leading into the tournament in general. Get a look at some course statistics. I'll also go back and look at the Genesis, critique my mixed condition model. I'll show you my lineups, where I went wrong, what I did correct, what I should have done, could have done, all of that good stuff. So generally it's a pretty good time in the morning. So if you're interested in that, do consider joining me 10:30 a.m. Eastern tomorrow morning. But for all of the wagers that you made this past week at the Genesis Invitational, for all of the DFS contests you entered this past week for the Genesis Invitational, and until I see you tomorrow night for the Data Dive Show, may all your bets be profitable.